This is Tim and Sid for Wednesday, August 26th, a day that will live for many and for many years. I'm Tim McCall, Sid Sixero. We're live on Sportsnet 590 The Fan and Sportsnet 360. You can also stream us sportsnet590.ca. And as always, podcast available 24/7 and on Sportsnet Now. Glad you're with us today because this will not be your average show.
No, Timmy. When we woke up today, we knew it would be busy regardless, right? Three games in the Stanley Cup playoffs. We had to chop up an incredible Canucks performance last night. They were great. Mm-hmm. 3 games in the NBA playoffs on the schedule when we woke up today. Jays taking on the Red Sox in Game 2. But what has transpired in the last 65 minutes eclipses every single one of those stories and may eclipse it for the foreseeable future because it is a happening right now in the NBA, Tim. I give the floor to you. There's a lot to talk about.
Yesterday, we heard the powerful comments from Fred VanVleet on the shooting of Jacob Blake and the suggestion that perhaps NBA players might boycott games. We ended up asking Nick Nurse about it. That interview made some waves in and around the NBA. Those waves are bigger today. The Milwaukee Bucks just did it. They refused to take the court for Game 5 of their series against the Magic, which was scheduled to begin at 4 p.m. Eastern just over an hour ago. Shams Charania reporting that the Bucks players formalized their decision to boycott Game 5 against Orlando, and that the Magic players wanted to play, but upon hearing the news, returned to their locker room. Bucks guard George Hill told our friend Mark Spears and the Undefeated that his team is not playing against Orlando tonight in light of the shooting of Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Quote, "We are tired of the killings and the injustice." And apparently it does not stop with the Orlando Magic and the Milwaukee Bucks. Shams Charania reporting, among others, that the Rockets and OKC are planning to boycott their Game 5 tonight. These are unprecedented times, to say the least. Sid, you and I were just on the Writer's Block radio side of things with Jeff Blair and Stephen Brunt, both very thoughtful men who have been around the game of sports reporting, and sports journalism for a long time. All 4 of us are in awe of what is happening right now. Beyond the statement that is being made here, your reaction to all this is what?
First off, it's always an honor to be on with Blair and Brunt. I think they know how much we love them, so thank you again for having us jump on. Some people out there, Tim, may be saying to themselves, not all, but you know and I know in 2020 there's 2 sides to every story, whether that's actually true or not. And I'm sure there are people looking at the Milwaukee Bucks and the rest of the NBA essentially today boycotting these games after all the work that went into setting these up, both personal and league-wide, saying, well, this is a bit much. Why do this? Black Lives Matters on the court. Many people across the league, not everybody, many people have kneeled during national anthems. We had a young lady kneel atop the CN Tower not that long ago during a national anthem. Why this? Why take this step? Here's why. This is one of the craziest news days I've seen in a long time. Not only do you have the aftermath of the Jacob Blake attempted murder, Tim, in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and the trouble they anticipate again tonight. 2 people died last night. Some 17-year-old punk from Illinois drove in with an AK-47, shot 3 people. 2 of them are dead, walked towards the cops with an AK-47 on his shoulder, is let through the line, and they had to find his ass back home in Illinois. So that's what's going on in Kenosha. That's just Kenosha. There's a Category 4 hurricane barreling in on the Texas-Louisiana border as we speak. You have the RNC happening tonight with the president. This is the craziest news cycle I've ever seen. The Milwaukee Bucks decide not to come out of their locker room. What do you think the number one trending topic is in North America on Twitter?
Yeah.
Milwaukee Bucks. This is why you protest. This is why you boycott. This is why when you have a platform, these young professionals thought they would make a difference to start. It was all with good intentions. And I would say more than half of them went for the sole reason of having gone through the George Floyd protests and thinking they could make a difference. Tim, you and I spoke how many times on this? I thought they could make a difference.
Yeah.
You thought they could make a difference. They're NBA players. It's LeBron James. It's Giannis Antetokounmpo. Of course they can make a difference. Then the video from Sunday. Then the video from last night. Then the video of cops letting a 17-year-old white kid with a gun over his shoulder walk through a line. Have a safe drive home, kid. Don't think that didn't play into this at all. This is why you protest. Because with everything else going on today, the Bucks just grabbed society by the back of the neck and said enough. And the responsibility on them, considering it's their state, was strong. And I'm sure that video that came out this morning had something to do with it as well. But this is why you do it. So while you sit there and some people just don't get it, and I'm not here to convince you, but that's why you protest.
It's also ironic that those people that you speak of most upset with this are part of the reason why this is happening.
Great.
You've got enough so far is part of the reason why this is happening. Make no mistake, this is a bold statement, and because of the responses that we are about to see over the next little while, the coming hours, whatever happens tonight, the days and weeks, this is a courageous statement. And remember, the Milwaukee Bucks not only call Wisconsin home, Sid, but if you don't know the name Sterling Brown, you should. He's a Buck guard that illegally parked at a Walgreens and was not only aggressively taken down, handcuffed, and tasered, he is now in court trying to prove that all of that had something to do with the color of his skin. And Sid's right. If you're wondering why this is relevant, you and I had a conversation with Dan Rather in another iteration of the show way back. And he told us that sunlight is the greatest disinfectant. I hope I don't need to explain that more. But the spotlight can lead to discussions, however unpleasant, and we can see how unpleasant some of these discussions are if you want to, but they can help arrive at a truth earlier than if it's allowed to fester in darkness. And I think that's where we are. I mean, I don't think we have to play the Doc Rivers clip for everyone to understand hearing a grown man cry. A nearly 60-year-old alpha male who has seen some of the highest highs life has to offer and is still begging for help, pleading for understanding while choking back tears, and have some people say, yeah, but what about? Or even worse, dismiss it, not understand it, and try and move on to the next thing. Like I think we're all at the understanding point for why this is happening. And we've now confirmed that the Lakers and Blazers will also not play. There will be no games today in the NBA where there were 3 scheduled.
Tim, I think they're done. And when I say done, I mean done. I think we have seen the last basketball of 2020 at this level. Something has happened here. And quite frankly, the silence from Adam Silver, the commissioner, is deafening right now. I have not seen anything. I have not seen a report. I have not seen a statement. I have not seen anything from a guy who was not afraid to jump into a fight if needed. Now, he may be on the phone with TNT, who had those 2 games tonight. He may be on the phone with ESPN, who had the games tomorrow, including Raptors Celtics. And I'm talking in past tense, but I don't know anything. Who among us thinks that game's going to happen? So I am bracing for this. This is not just a moment with 2 teams or 6 teams in one day. If you love basketball, if you are a sports fan, you got to get that out of your head right now. Because what's happening in Kenosha, Wisconsin is getting worse. I heard a press conference today. Those guys could mess up a grilled cheese sandwich running that town. That is going to get worse. Milwaukee cannot play. And if Milwaukee can't play, how can I mean, 4 other teams fell into lockstep pretty quickly.
Rick writes in and says, obviously the Bucks boycotting a basketball game won't bring an overnight end to racism. It's not the point. By playing the game, they'd be providing you with a distraction from real societal issues. By boycotting, they're forcing you to talk about these issues. However uncomfortable those conversations are. And I want to reiterate here, Sid, because I don't think that those who are yelling and screaming their opinion contrary or are saying this won't do anything or demeaning the cause understand how much they're a part of why this is happening. And that's the irony here in all of this. And I wonder if why we won't eventually get basketball again this year or this season. Or I don't know that I don't know that you're not correct in assuming that we might not see the end of this basketball season. I also don't know if players might think that by sitting out a couple days, they stir up the conversation when it's needed most. Because right now there's a ton of conversation around this. Like, this is unbelievable what we're seeing here. And during the Republican National Convention, no less. And I'm not going to walk down the political road of this.
No, but it's the news cycle you're talking about. That's what you're talking about is the actual news cycle right now in terms of what the temperature is in the country to our north or to our south, excuse me.
But I also believe that, and my opinion is, all we're asking for is equality. Like, this is very, very simple. And while there are people who make a living complicating it and do a wonderful job confusing people and creating more chaos in what is already a remarkably tough time for most folks, the issue remains simple. People are asking for equality, for the equal rights that are promised to them in the Constitution and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And either you're for equality or for some reason against it, which I believe to be the wrong side of history. Don't let anyone twist it. The ask here is to work towards equality. And either you are for equality or against it. And I am all for equal rights in Canada. And if anyone is asking me about the United States, I would say the same. And I think oftentimes in these spots, Sid, people do their best to change the storyline, to change the topic of conversation. And when you break it down simply and say we're asking for equality, it's hard to be a douchebag. Sorry. It's harder.
It's harder. Some people try, though.
Yep.
Some people try. But I agree with everything you just said here. One quick note, Tim, in a series of quick notes throughout this show. The first is the NBA is saying these games today will be, quote, rescheduled.
Yeah,
that's the first thing.
Yeah.
The second thing Shams just threw out there, and our team is just pouring us with updates as best they can, and we appreciate it. NBA players have been called for a meeting tonight in Orlando to determine next steps. That's according to Shams Charania of The Athletic and Stadium. I don't know if I'm assuming the league has called that meeting, Tim. That doesn't seem like just a PA meeting. Obviously, this has grown. So the news cycle here is going to be insane, just in a basketball sense, for the next 24 to 48 hours. No question.
The one thing I think we would be remiss if we left out is the talk amongst the Toronto players specifically that we heard from Nick Nurse about the words "going home."
Yeah. Forgive me, Tim. Go on.
Once you leave the bubble, obviously, everything changes.
Yeah, there's a way back in the bubble, but it takes time, as we know. And considering we're in a playoff situation, it seems like when you leave, you are committed. It seems like you have left the team for good, which I understand. But for Nick Nurse, again, remember the context of what we're talking about. Nick Nurse, the day before a game that has not been postponed yet, game 1 against a team that they felt they've been neck and neck with for a number of years right now and have never met in the playoffs, the Boston Celtics. Mm-hmm. He's got guys in one-on-one conversations saying, "Coach, I feel like I want to go home." Think about that. Absorb it. Absorb all of this. Anyone who sees this and says, "That's too much. I don't get it." Well, no, you don't get it. You don't get it. But doesn't the fact it's gotten to this, you think they're doing this you think players are doing this for the gram? Like, what do you think is happening here? Yeah. The Raptors have been sequestered for 5 weeks. They want a ring more than anybody. LeBron wants a ring more than you think what do you think is happening here? It's just insane to me, Tim. That other side of it. It's insane to me. And we've reached the point, and whether you like it or not, kneeling for national anthems, and the NFL better pay attention to, kneeling for national anthems doesn't work. It doesn't.
And for many who were screaming for it, remember, this is peaceful protest. If you were asking for peaceful protest, this is what, when I was talking to Nick Nurse yesterday, and I was wearing the Cleveland Summit shirt from 60 years ago, and Colin Kaepernick takes a knee, and 55 years later, and people don't want that kind of protest, and then protests get violent, and they say, well, we want peaceful protest, and you say, well, Colin Kaepernick was peaceful protest, and you didn't like that either. And then you move on to the NBA, and there's Black Lives Matter, and because of a statement that says something about nuclear families, people cling to that, and not that it takes a village to raise a child, and that all of us are somehow tied to everyone else, which shouldn't be shocking in society today, and that we all need to help raise all of our children. That somehow becomes not good enough in the protest. That somehow becomes a part that makes this controversial in some way, shape, or form, when again it's peaceful protest. So if you don't want the peaceful protest, and you obviously don't want the unpeaceful protest, what do you want?
Just like to anyone who doesn't get it, who finds themselves talking about this issue with someone they'd never talked basketball with, or this issue with, that's why. Stop yourself in the middle of that conversation, whether you're agreeing or disagreeing with what's going on. Just stop yourself in the middle of that conversation and realize, oh, God, I'm talking about it. And I probably wouldn't have talked about this issue as much. Maybe that's the reason why this is happening. By the way, Tim, the irony of all ironies. Sorry, go ahead.
Just let me add one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I do think we need to have more open conversation. I really do. I attempt to read every side of every story as much as I can. I think we need to have more of that and more of those open conversations so that people can understand.
I agree.
Without being accusatory, without shouting down.
Well,
and sometimes it's very hard. Yeah, no, and I know it's very hard, and I know that it can be, but I think we need to have more of the real, open, honest conversations so that people can understand.
I agree. Hopefully we'll get to that point, Timmy.